give the audience something to enjoy as well.
Hello, everyone. This is Curt Doolittle and team from the Natural Law Institute. We're having our weekly staff meeting. We've just spent an hour having Francis drag us through the details of actually getting work done. And so now we're ready to have a fun conversation about fun topics. So there were two topics. One is the manor bund idea. There was something else earlier in the week that I said, well, we should talk about this. Can anybody remember what that was? Because
Did you bring it up in the staff call channel or
yeah, we should talk about this, and I couldn't find.
Organization, what to bring people into.
Is that what it was?
I thought it was the NFL cheerleaders.
That too. We can talk about NFL cheerleaders, but I've been told I can't say a lot of things on YouTube anymore because I get in trouble. So anyway,
that is not the controversial stuff.
That's not a controversial topic.
No.
NFL cheerleaders.
No.
I got one picked out, by the way. I have one favorite. She's just awesome. Anyway, so Luke, what was the subject again?
I believe Noah had posted something about structuring the organization in a way that allows people to come into it and move through it. And he said we should talk about that at one of these meetings.
Okay. It doesn't ring as. And then I'm still
Structure.
Huh?
I was talking about creating more formal structure. So the men, like in this room here, and some of the men were very invested into the Institute and into our work. And there are a lot of men that would like to get that invested. Why are we so invested? Because we put in work. The more work you put into something, the more invested, the more likely you are to stick with it. And we need to give some of the men that are on some of the lower levels, they're not quite ready to join this room, but there needs to be a room for them to go into where they have something to do, not just sit around and talk, but some assignment. Even if that assignment purely exists to help them bond and build skills, it still needs to be given something to do. This way we're cultivating a pipeline of future leaders and thinkers and doers.
All you'd have to do is, because how I would do that in the business is that I would have a junior partner meeting, right? So I have partner meetings for the 30 partners, and then I'd have the junior partner meetings for the equal number, sometimes larger, of junior partners in the company who are, they only have a few shares or they have options or whatever, but they, and the reason is you have a fairly large number because it's like a one-room schoolhouse, is they tend to educate each other. I take the burden off you. And then you try to explain, like in our case, it'd be useful to explain this policy that we just completed to them. And it would, but the challenge we get into is how do you, we've got Gabriel in here, and Gabriel's freaking talented, right? I mean, I'm not trying to blow up your head or anything, Gabe, but you're pretty fucking talented, right? And so, and we've had Jacob in here. Jacob's talented. He's like, what is he, 21 years old, right? And so, he's for the audience, he's at work. So we could have another meeting for like this, and we could organize that as a weekly or bi-weekly meeting. It's probably better weekly because your forgetting curve is there. And we could cover subjects and see if we can get more people up to speed faster. So instead of having a formal class like we've planned in the past, we could just do basically a grad school session, which is a topic by topic, work through the content so we know that they're able to continue to grow with it. I don't have a feeling for this, maybe Gabriel and Martin do, but how many people would be fit for that conversation? If you think on Telegram, is it 2 people, 4 people, 8, 12, 20, or how many? How many people are fit for that conversation? I suspect it's smaller than we think.
Well, off the top of my head, I can think of 2. Yes.
Yes. So, maybe we could do one for the up and comers.
And I think once we have that in place, more people will say, hey, I want to do the work to get in that room.
Correct.
And so they'll start pulling them. They need some objective to work towards. Most men are not self-managing. They need some objective given to them from the outside. Then they'll self-manage achieving the objective. But they want to, if they want to participate and they want to be one of us, then they have a path.
Social participation, social reinforcement's a hell of a motivator, right?
Oh yeah. No, we want to use that. And we have to see too that to some degree the power in our organization will come from depth, not just how high we soar intellectually. It will come with depth of organization too.
Sure.
And that's that we need to cultivate, because we have the top. We need to cultivate the rest of the body.
You're wearing that muscle shirt today and it's humiliating me. When you're wearing our fellow dress shirt, when you're wearing that, I don't notice. But look at those shoulders. It's intimidating.
Yeah, and you know what? I've never been exercising less in my life than the last few years. I have found that if you really intensely exercise for half an hour a day, and every movement you make it count, that you don't really need to do that much to stay in good shape, especially if you've developed a core foundational musculature to begin with.
All right. So
Why don't we tie that into our other efforts and use that as that internal NLI connection?
I didn't make the leap there, Luke.
Well, that's what we're starting with in our work session, right? We have the path of 3 steps. Make that the bottom step. Make that the office hours. Have it have the goal of producing the next set of experts.
Great. Okay, that's what you were getting at. Yes, great. All right. So I'm gonna ask you guys, Gabriel, because you guys have you say that you could think of 2 off the top of your head, Martin.
Well, if I go through the list, maybe 5.
4. I'm
some
thinking
guys-
4. 4 or 5.
There are some guys who haven't been active for a long time, but I remember them being good on Facebook.
We also should have those guys. There should be a meeting where it's an induction, and we make sure absolutely sure they understand the decorum rules, and that if they're joining, they're agreeing. Have them swear. No, I swear that this is how I'm going to behave. If you want to join any organization, there's a commitment, and we have to be clear what that commitment is, and we have to have people that want to make it freely.
I just don't feel. I think you're ahead by 1 generation.
Maybe, yeah.
You're ahead by 1 generation. We have to create the pattern before we can set the demand.
Yeah.
So okay. Great. So there are some people so Martin, Gabriel, would you guys be willing to try to recruit those people into a meeting?
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
Yep. I'm trying to figure out what you're doing, what you're looking at, Gabriel, because it's more interesting than listening.
The list. I'm looking at the list on a private group on the Telegram. There are like 4 people that I think have enough of a foundation to maybe be interested.
All right. Can you explore that for next week? Thank you.
Yeah.
We'll have to
That
see
also
if
gives Martin and Gabrielle an opportunity not just to be in here with us, but to develop leadership skills. And so it gives more value to everybody along the chain.
Well, I kind of think they have them already, but yeah. What I really hear is that good. I don't have to own it if that happens. That which makes me happy.
We'll have to see if we actually agree who those people are.
All right, can you guys take a look at that for next week? And Francis, can you put that down on our action items?
Will do. So we'll just call it what should we call it? The junior staff meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
I still can't believe, I mean, when we got Martin, I was like, when we found Martin, or Martin found out, I was like, what the fuck? How do we get more of these? And then for Gabriel was the same. I was like, what the fuck? Where did this guy come from? You know, how do we get more of these? So the question is, Gabriel, how do we get more of you?
I have no idea. It's just a matter, I think, it's just a grind until you find someone who's like who's long enough into it, I guess.
Yeah.
I think like me.
You're not going to attribute it to your astounding character, intelligence, wisdom, accumulated knowledge. You're not going to attribute to any of those factors.
Well, you need these things as kind of like a baseline for who you want, but there are guys in the Telegram group that are who are a long time. They have a long time of like knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
So we can see if actually they've just been waiting for us to communicate with them instead of them like asking.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, Gabriel so a lot of effort to answering others more so than me nowadays, actually.
Yes.
And I think explaining to others makes you learn more than actually reading.
It does.
yeah.
All right.
We train trainers here. That's not implicit.
Well, it's. I mean, I like to think of it as it's not apprenticeship, but it's understudy. I mean, it's really it's like when you're in grad school and you have to go teach the class, and then when you teach the class, you're so worried about embarrassing yourself in front of the class that you're really careful to make sure you understand what you're going to teach. So, but anyway, we have a more forgiving atmosphere. But all right. Have we addressed that issue a little bit? What was it? So there's that. My feedback will continue to be the same, as that building these organizations has to happen organically until the point where the demand to join it is higher than the internal demand to find people, and that happens organically. When it's very interesting if you I build a business with the explicit intention to make people want to work there, and I sacrifice profit to do that, right? I sacrifice. So but the thing is that I get growth out of that because I get talent, right? And so the thing is, you can only grow the business or the movement, frankly, because it's still it's like a business. Still, you can only grow the movement as fast as you can find the talent. Otherwise, what you're doing is actually weakening the structure of the organization. So I think that one of our all desires, everybody's desire internally, and the people who follow us that want us to have more influence, is to be able to grow faster. But we have the problem is you can't pick up what we do in 2 weeks, right? It's just not possible. So we are somewhat constrained in growth by our success at finding people who are interested enough to pay the learning cost. And to some degree, like many professions, that's filter is actually a pretty good filter. The price of entry, in other words, intellectual cost of entry, is a pretty good filter, which is why we have all these crazy characters on the.
It's also cheap. It's also cheap through us, though. Meaning, I could make a special plea with you or offer you a promise. Follow a fellow for 6 months, and if your life doesn't get better, like we'll pay you something.
Yeah.
Because it's
Well, I
gonna.
mean, this is an interesting topic. I had this with Rudyard yesterday. I sort of, what is our, we're in this interview and we're having a difference of opinion on something. I said, well, I mean, the difference is you're a priest and I'm a judge, right? I mean, but what it really comes down to is that he's like, the universe is incomprehensible. Well, it is to the ordinary person. But if you talk to us to say, well, if you know this, our work, all of a sudden the universe becomes extraordinarily explicable. Right? I mean, the universe doesn't seem complicated to me. It's more like there's just a lot going on. But anything you look at, you can understand.
Be easier if everyone stopped lying.
Well, and here's the thing, even past the limits of our map of reality, what we understand, because we understand how it works, we can extrapolate what will be out there, so we don't get that surprised when we go off of our limits.
Right, we don't. All right, so I mean, Brandon was the first one to say that this is going to really, this increases your IQ, right? Your demonstrated intelligence, right? Your capacity to understand. And so we know this is the case because we can see it in everybody. And we can see the mindfulness that results from it. So those are promises we can make, right? Those are legitimate promises we can make, if you're able and willing and able to do it. And you have to have enough interest to be able to do it. We can't make you sit in front of us and think about this stuff the 4 or 5 hours a day in the background processing that's required to make you do it, right? We can't force you to do that. It's not like you're going to school. You have to want to have that. And I think some of us are wired to want that knowledge, and some of us are wired to watch crash videos, right? And whatever else is on there. All right.
You're doing both, so
Sorry?
you're managing to do both.
Yes, well, I figured if I say this, who's going to come back at me? All right. So in any event, okay, so have we got that topic sort of covered, Noah? The way we sort of look at it is we have a title here based Luke, we call it, what do you call it? It's not faculty, it's what Luke, what's the title?
Fellowship.
Fellowship. So we're fellows, right? If you can become a fellow. So there's a hierarchy to this, which is very small. It's that you're an associate, you're a something fellow, and then you're fellow, senior fellow, and most of us are fellows. So there is a way to get up there. We just don't want to dilute that, right? So we got to attach responsibility to those, to the responsibility to those titles. Other than that, it's just can you do the work? Right. I think what's going to happen, of course, is there's going to be a group like us, then there'll be an administrative group, which is and the administrative group will handle all this interaction with other folks, the outside world, and that'll naturally evolve. But do we need funding to do that? And we need to be able to make a meaningful difference to do that. And so it's not, we've been at trying to form this organization just for a little while, right? I mean, I put the institute together and I had one plan for it, but now we've got this organization together and we haven't been that aggressive with it except for the past few years. Well, if it was a startup, you could make it work faster because you can throw money at the problem, right? And you can bring money in, but you can't. But the difference is with startup, you can hire people out of the field that know the subject matter. Whereas we can't. We have to produce our own people, and we have to bring them into the management team. And so the start of the life cycle of our startup is a little longer. Somebody said the other day which I thought it was really kind of funny. I hear this pretty often. You have to do this. I'm like, no, you don't. I mean, look at what the Marxists did. If I ever look at how religions and ideologies work, right? It's just the same, it's a business, it's just the startup cycle is longer.
I think we're like we're like an open source project without the industrial backers.
Yes, well, we'll get them though.
Except
You know we're gonna
We
get
don't have
them.
them yet.
we are creating real intelligence, though, not artificial shit.
So,
I can see a series of very good marketing memes. You know, fake meat, real meat, AI, real intelligence.
yeah, that's
AI and
great.
RI.
The thing is that if, for example, if, I mean, I know the funding inside of Mises, and I know the funding inside of Cato, and I know the funding inside of Heritage, and that's a really big ladder, right? But if you are helping policy move forward, the money basket's quite large. Right, so we have to produce a few results. Just like if I was talking to somebody today who wants to do a startup, and I'm like, the problem is you've got to have something to show an investor to know you can deliver. Right, it's the same thing with these people, is you have to show something you can deliver. So there's quite a bit of, scarcity of cash when you're trying to put together each of these deliverables. But at some point, like any market, it just flips where the money is willing to come to you, right? So I learned a lot watching those think tanks work. And when you understand that somebody like Cato is absolutely in the business of trying to raise money for the ability to influence policy for the Republican Party, right? And that's their job, right? And so they get an absurd amount of money every year. From somebody like Mises, they're an outlier, right? And so they're small, but they still produce enough revenue to keep those full-time faculty and keep their presence alive, right? And their window's passed, right? Libertarianism was over after Ron Paul, right? So they're still maintaining a scenario. So you look at a place like Heritage, where they're just like, this is like they've got the best intellectuals in the world, and they can afford to pay them, and they're embedded in a university, which is, I'm sure, what the Mises group originally hoped to do with that university down there. So we are in a position more activist oriented than Mises or Heritage or some of the others. We're much closer to political action committee than think tank when we get out, right? Because we have a think tank, but then we're moving to the direction of a PAC. So I would expect the money is not difficult for us to get as we move in that direction. Assuming they don't, I'm trying to think of how to spin this to be something funny about Luke, but I can't. Right?
Assuming they don't find all the cheerleaders.
Yeah,
that we've employed.
I'm more. I have lived an interesting life, so I'm more attackable than you guys. Anyway.
Well, I did have a few newspapers call me an extremely dangerous man, so I was quite happy with that.
Why wouldn't we just onboard all the people who are more attackable than us?
Perfect.
Thank you. Anyway, all right. So
me and Bryan are putting a lot of effort into being more attackable than you.
all right, can we switch over to topic number 2? All right, so the way you position this was manner bond, right? Is this Noah? This is your thing, right?
Yeah.
So I usually say, the way I say it is, all societies find some sort of organization right, that they use as their founding organization. In the West, it's the society is actually, it's a top down. So it's an aristocratic tradition that has slowly integrated each additional class.
Yes.
But fundamentally, it's a duty first. We have a duty first civilization. So we're responsible to commons. Now, what's that compared to, say, the Middle East, which is a duty to family first, a civilization. There's no duty to commons. The only thing they have is the religion, which is a means of keeping people from trying to claim their aristocracy and have status. And if you go to Asia, it's a bureaucratic tradition. It started out interestingly and so you have a clerical, a secular clerical tradition in the Chinese civilization. You have a very strange one in the Hindu situation, which is just, it doesn't bother, you can't talk about it because it's too complicated for normies to even comprehend it. You have the priestly lower class situation in the Middle East, and you have the aristocratic class system in the West, but you tend to retain the social order or some sort of value system that supports your foundations. So when you say mannerbund, which is a word I still didn't, I'm not sure I really comprehend this word, right? What I hear is the military that is the militia. In other words, the initiatic brotherhood of soldiers, of warriors, not soldiers, the initiatic brotherhood of warriors, which is the very old term by Maria Gimbutas for the origins of Western religion, is a derivation out of, an extension out of the initiatic rituals of the brotherhood of warriors. All right. So that was my context. What does mannerbund mean?
The way that it's being used in popular context is it is your little band of men. And so, think of that as a group up to about 12 men. Get bigger than that, you need to divide for organizational purposes. And it's the group of men that you do battle in the world with, whatever that happens to be. That may not be martial. A trade guild is the tradesmen saying the aristocracy has their warrior guilds. Maybe we should create a trade guild based on what they do. And so all of the other parts of the tri-functional system created their own guilds. There were farmer guilds, there were blacksmith guilds, because that system of organizing where men supported each other worked very well. And most of these guilds, they weren't just a bunch of guys getting together. They owned property in common. They had a guild house. So if you were retired and you couldn't look after yourself, you got injured on the job, whatever it was, you go and retire to the guild house. You could get food at any time in the guild house. Mm-hmm. These things were all part of your rights as a guild member, and in exchange you paid dues. And so today we could look at that as there used to be the Longfellows and the Buffaloes and all of these other societies, these fraternal societies in America, and they were there primarily to look after men who fell outside the cracks of society. There was no welfare state. And you show up in New York, you're Italian, you go to the local Italian guild or group, whatever it was, and they would say, okay, well, here's a cot, 3 hot meals a day, and we'll find you a job. And once you've worked your way up, you owe so much to these people that helped you get out of nothing. You're going to now give back, and you're going to hire your guys. Mm-hmm. I have a job to do. I'm going to hire guys from my fraternity. And essentially, in modern times, it's become a fraternity of men. And the concept of the Mannerbund is the manners that bind them together. So they're bound together in a code of conduct or a code of behavior that outlines it. So there's the two things. It's a group of men bound by a code of honor.
So I understand that. And I understand the intentional destruction of those institutions by the feminists. movement, which is a Marxist feminist movement. They
All you
intentionally
have to
said-
do, all you have to do to destroy a man or woman is insert one woman into it.
Yeah.
That's it. And in the case of in the big cities, where they actually were very powerful, they decided elections and everything. The Federation of fraternities would decide who got elected and everything that happened in the city. They used the welfare state to say, no, instead of giving your allegiance to this fraternity, you're going to now give it to the welfare state. We're going to keep you on, and we're going to give you all the things that your fraternity would have given you. Only with the fraternity, it was a reciprocal exchange. You got help, and then you helped in return. With a welfare state, it was no longer reciprocal. And so it pulled people away because you could suddenly take more than you were giving. And for many people, they'll just go in that direction, that they were looking for the best deal they can get.
Luke, I saw one of your smiles come out there, Luke. Is there something you wanted to say in there?
No, it just the mechanisms that we're looking at here. To me, what they do is they serve as the function they provide is they serve as that transition from duty being motivated by obligation to duty being motivated by reverence. The deeper you get into these organizations, the lower the cost of your duty, because it becomes an internal motivation rather than an external motivation. So I think it's an important vehicle.
It's also a bit more fragile than we let on, meaning one feminine mind will ruin it, not a female. As soon as someone turns it in about them or makes it about caring for other people and not defending what's yours, then it's over for you.
Irresponsibility. Females generate irresponsibility because that's what the framework is. All right. So I understand that this is the history, and I understand what you're trying to discuss is you're trying to say, well, the mental health crisis, which is pretty severe after COVID, it was bad enough before. The mental health crisis was bad. Social media made it worse, and COVID made it hella worse. And I would say that the destruction of our cultural institutions made it worse. I would say that television was a major factor in the destruction of those because it provided entertainment without social connection. I would say that the feminist movement, in particular's attack on male organizations, basically took away our insurance, right, by the state, yet the females want all their insurance by the state, right, independent of us. So they're sort of incredibly destructive to men. And so the social media ended up producing psychological uncertainty for both sexes. The online marketplace has created the very odd perception that you find a mate like you shop on fucking Amazon, which is just bizarre to me. I mean, I suppose if you grow up with it, it might be natural, but like from my perception, I just can't even comprehend how you could think something that's stupid when it's really an exercise in mutual adaptation, right? It's not an exercise in finding what you want so you don't have to adapt, right? I mean, that's the
It also turns relationships from an investment to a consumption. I'm just going to go buy this person online.
So, and then you add the social media, the dating structure, COVID, and you get people who are basically borderline psychotic because we're creatures of habit. Like we swim in a stream of cultural information and continuous external reinforcement. If you leave us to our alone, you get what happens to somebody who put them in a sensory deprivation chamber just at a slower pace, which is you make anybody who isn't extraordinarily self-regulating go nuts, and it's fucking cruel. And so we're doing it. So anyway, Luke, I want to just finish my arc before you said, because you were chuckling along there, and I saw that one come. So what do you want to say?
Oh, just the Amazon reference. I was going to say that's also why we see the more number of reviewers, the better it sells on Amazon. So you have all these skyrocketing body counts because everybody wants as many reviewers as possible on their product.
Look at
Also,
Brandon.
not to
Look
mention,
at
it's
Brandon's face.
Wow, she got 4.5 dicks out of 5. That's fantastic.
it's a low bandwidth communication,
Yes,
right? Versus the traditional dating markets, very high bandwidth. You can
yes,
read the person's micro expressions and the smell, size, and everything.
yeah.
Online, it's you get like this thin and you're of a bandwidth, and you're trying to
You also have, it's
you're
like
trying to
illusion creating.
right.
Well, here's another thing is that men are very good at judging women's attractiveness based on photos and looks, because that's our primary attractiveness metric. Women are terrible at that. And I know this because women tell me, he looked good online, and then you look the same in person. Everything was great, and then he touched me, and I felt really gross, and I didn't want to talk to him anymore. Or I smelled him and I didn't like him anymore, whatever it is. And you mentioned this, Francis, like all of that depth of richness to in-person conversations. It very often can take a woman 2 or 3 dates to know if she likes a guy. Guys know instantly, I like her or I don't like her, I'm attracted to her or not. And so for women, it's been an absolute disaster, because it's telling them to go look for mate the same way men do, but that's not how they're wired. So they're not, and if you are a woman that's wired to focus on looks, you're probably a very high testosterone woman. That's why you're doing that. And you're going to have a hard time getting along with the kind of man you're attracted to, because he doesn't want a man with tits. He wants a very feminine woman. Normally, the more masculine you are, the more feminine a woman you want.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really, and nobody's found the solution to that. Even the Christian dating sites, all these other groups, they're all doing it basically the same way. They're trying to commercialize something that is not commercializable.
Yeah, it's like how you said, there are no people that you can't productize a person this way, and it doesn't work because the subjective valuation between the two people is too precise. I just know that, like,
That's just
go ahead.
I was going to say, that's just a computation problem.
That's a
You
what?
can't do it yet. It's a computation problem, right? You're talking about like subjective value. You're talking about pairwise computation and the bandwidth of computation.
Oh, correct. I agree with you. You can't do it yet, right?
Right.
The issue, and that would, if we get to that point, it will take the problem out of dating, because now instead of, hey, Curt, this girl says she really likes you. I know her. This, high school stuff, right? I know this. I know you're dating Trish, but this girl Karen really likes you, and she wanted me to tell. Her friend, whatever, wanted me to tell you, and I know her, and she's cool, and so all of a sudden you've got legitimacy from your social pool. So you're walking into this relationship with legitimacy, right? I mean, I've met everybody through somebody. The only people I did know, the 2 people I met online, right, was Amanda, right? Which is like, I was on one day and she contacted me, right? And because it was the same for her, like we were on like 1 or 2 days and we contacted each other, and that was it. And then my Russian girlfriend, who's a little blonde ballerina, right? She's like, well, I mean, and the thing is, I talked with her for hours before we met. And when we met, it was like body chemistry electric, right? It was fantastic. But I mean, this idea that you can just go on 50 dates and you're not going to lose any bonding capacity is, you're out of your fucking mind. It's like sleeping with a bunch of women. What happens? I can tell you what happens from my experiences. You start to treat them all the same. You don't invest in any of them. It's not good. Fun, not good.
So back to Mannerbund.
Yeah. So what happens is when men don't have a Mannerbund, they still have a need for all of that social stimulation that we get from other men. And what ends up happening is they look to their wife for that. But your wife cannot substitute for a group of male friends.
Mm-hmm.
Or even worse, I've seen guys like, oh, my son is my best friend, and he's like 6. No, I'm sorry, he can't be your best friend. You can't lean on him. He leans on you.
Mm-hmm.
And you need other men to talk to. Ideally, those are men within shooting distance, like within a kilometer of you. That would be great. And because then there's a problem. They're so close that you can reach out to them. Second best.
Oh, no, you're in the other continent.
Yeah,
this is like a time zone away, and you're the 2 guys I call.
Well, this is what ends up happening now.
Brandon,
Is we're all online, but it's better than nothing. And it fixes the social need. We still need to get together physically sometimes, but it fixes the social need. But men don't have that. Most men have a really hard time making friends. I know this. I ask my clients, one of the first questions I ask is, tell me about your best friends. And they'll talk about, when's the last time you saw that guy? Oh, it's been like 6 months. And that's their best friend. They haven't seen him for 6 months. And that's most men. If I get a guy who says, I've got like 4 or 5 really good close friends, I'm like, can any of them give you for free some advice that might make it you don't need to pay for coaching? And occasionally they're like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. I never thought about that. We'll go ask them and then come back if it's not good enough. Because I really want people to solve their own problems if they can, even if they're willing to pay. But no, men don't have that. And here's the other thing. We don't just, I don't suggest men just have peer people in their Mannerbund. They need to have older men in their Mannerbund that are at least old enough to be almost their father, if not an older brother. And they need younger men, because you're going to get different perspectives, and you're going to get the joy of helping the younger man up. You're going to get the wisdom from the older man, and you may get different types of advice. There are people I'll go to for advice about money. And
this is all true. So you identified a problem.
Yeah.
We identify a need, and that need is being blocked by a problem, right? Now, the thing is that you have to provide, what can we do about it?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, go ahead.
What's actionable? Because to me, the restoring the incentives, when what's the real underlying structure is that you can obtain entertainment, which is essentially sedation. You can obtain entertainment as sedation in lieu of intermale contact, despite the fact that every act of sedation is decreasing your long-term happiness. So how do you change that over to people when it's like when the environment is basically electronically delivering you crack cocaine every fucking day?
Yeah, men need to understand that the reason that their marriage is under stress is in most cases is because they don't have a masculine group around them. And that means their wife does not see. I'll give you an example. When I have men around and my wife sees how those men interact with me and demonstrate respect to me, she doesn't shit test me at all. Now, she doesn't do it very often anyway, because she's not prone towards that. But if your woman is testing you all the time, it's because she never gets a chance to see if anybody else respects you. So she's got to test it. If you're having, if you've got problems and you're dumping those on your woman, of course she's going to be upset with that. It's not that you can't talk to your wife about your problems, but she's not a man. You can't put that weight on her. That's what we put on each other. And so men need to understand that
it's important.
There's a huge cost to this.
We like that weight put on each other.
Yes. No, a
Like
man
that
asks me for advice. I feel good. That makes me feel useful. I'm lucky enough I get paid.
Men need it. We need it.
Yeah. And I think men need to realize that they're not happy right now, and that no amount of sedation is going to make them happy again.
So part of what you're saying is that you've overplayed the marriage thing such that you think that women are going to make you happy. But the answer is they're going to make part of you happy, right? But they're not going to make, well, yeah. But they're not going to make, well, I mean, I love women, right? But, if you would say, but I look at my world as I have my wife, my business partners, and my friends, yes. Right? And I need to have all 3 of those full. Now, you might say I need and that's because my business partners are always my social circle. But I'm wired that way, right? That's for me. I have to have a mission. Otherwise.
Well, men bond over shared struggle. So you're doing something with other men That's how you bond. Even if you're not your business partners, you got to find something to do. Even if it's not essential, just do something
So you
together.
just hit the issue. Is
Yeah.
you have to find friends with men who share a purpose.
Mhm.
Even if that purpose is just reciprocal care. But you know, that's why the civil society, which means all those volunteer organizations used to work, is you actually need that to be happy. So this bothers me because bothers the libertarian in me, because I'm an infovore and I need the information. And as an autistic, social was not that as helpful to me as having like television and books and whatever. So I'm like, well, no, these things are really good, except that like Noah reminds me, we're not normal, right? And so when you look at the majority of the population, they're actually starved, right? Because they're being addicted to an information stream that's sedating, causes them to not be physically active, causes them not to develop meaningful relationships. And I'm like, we live in boxes with TV friends. And you wonder why people are unhappy. Well, it's obvious. I mean, I can call one of you guys up, or it's not like you're my only friends, but I'm in call one of you guys up, and because we're in the same world right together. So I'm calling you guys up and say, I need a moment. Right, Brandon, I've called you, right? I've called you. But Luke,
It only gets harder for people as we
right,
give
no, I've called
more
you.
convenience, because they're more dependent. So they need each other more, but they use each other less. Because it's inconvenient to try to use one another. This is an accelerating problem, if I can double down on the point that I'm always making. The pace of the problem is going to pick up until people pick up the signal that we're trying to gift them.
Yeah.
Well, and here's the thing. I think the pain for men has reached a point where many men are going, okay, what I'm doing isn't working.
Yes.
And some of them are killing themselves. And some of them are taking harder drugs. They have to up the sedation. This is why we have a drug epidemic amongst young men. And what we want to say is neither of those two are fixing your problem. Here's a better solution. And you don't need to do anything at first. You just need to get together. That is a challenge. One of the men was mentioning earlier in one of the groups that I run that he was, for 18 months, he was the only guy in his group. In other words, it was a group of one. And he would constantly be inviting people. And he says, all of a sudden, he's got two guys there now all the time. They actually moved closer to him to live with him. He's up in one of the Nordic countries. And so that happens if you stick at it long enough, you start to attract and pull people in. And that's what we all have to be doing. Some of us are going to pull people in. Some of us are going to look for an existing group and join. You may have to get over the fact that it's not exactly what you want in that other group. This is like dating. We have an idea of the perfect spouse. We'll never get that woman because we don't qualify. And we have the idea of the perfect man or woman to join, but they wouldn't let us in.
Yeah.
So we have to go get what we can get.
My grandmother used to say, she says, well, Curt, you can't be too particular about your friends or you won't have any.
Yes.
And it's actually, it was brilliant. I wish I could do her French accent. I can't because it's Canadian French, so it's sort of odd. But she would have these little bits of wisdom, and that was one of them. And it's so true. Is that you can't? I mean, if anybody's willing to be my friend, right? I'm willing to play that game as long as it's not a cost, right? I mean, it's a reciprocal exchange. And that's just the way to do it. But I mean, if you go out there and you're trying to find positive reinforcement for yourself as you are, rather than try to find some group of guys to work with that obtain positive reinforcement together, you're going to feel alienated. Anyway, so again, we know this is the issue. We know this is happening. Brandon just said, well, it's a market failure problem. And so the market won't correct until the market's failed. Noah just said that, well, I think the market's failing and the guys are knowing it. The problem is you have to be able to create an institution or some sort of framework that helps people. Now, normally it's like when sports arrived, the concept of sports as we know it, which used to be an aristocratic thing, arose when hunting was no longer needed or necessary. So that's why all these sports became available after the Industrial Revolution. Is because men would go out hunting. That's what you would go do, right? And so then with the hunting's no longer necessary because there's chickens and food and stuff. So you would go out, you started having sports teams because we had free time and things like that. And we had the work environment. So then we started going to colleges, and so that made them even more status oriented. So even today, if you find there's a lot of guys, and I mean, I'm not one of these guys, but you know, the guys who, like, I used to go on a kayaking group in not kayaking, White River rafting group. You know, Francis, out there in Northwest, this is common, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so I used to go with that because my friend Eric was involved. You just have to join one of those things. Do I really care that much about White River rafting? Not particularly. It's kind of fun, but it's more about the loyalty you build with the other guys that you go on the trip with. And it's really fun to dunk the chicks in the water.
So,
that's really fun too.
Well, so I can think of several things to say about that. You know, the TSAP Pacific Northwest chapter, the one that Tyler Saban's running, these work parties, right? That's one great way of getting men together, because you have a purpose, you have some level of adversity, whether it's trying to put together a chicken coop, or clean up somebody's yard, cut a tree down, and so on. So that's one method. And usually during those meetings, the ones I was able to go to, the men will work together, and then if they bring their wives and so on, that the women will work in a separate capacity, or in a separate function. So even though it's not purely a men's group, you do have some level of separation, that the women are not there to do the men's job and the vice versa, right?
In fact, that's an important
women
part
coordinate very slowly. It's frustrating.
Well, this is part of the advantage of having a group of men, is that most of our wives are kind of lonely too if they don't have female friends. And not all, and my wife, even though she's an incredibly quiet and introverted person, is also very good at making friends. So she never has a problem with that. Her problem is too many friends and having to say no. But most women have a real hard time trusting other women, because they're not that good at they perceive danger where it isn't very often. And so I vetted the man, and I don't just vet a man. I'm not going to hang around with a guy if I don't like his wife, because I don't want, because somehow she's in my life through him. So if she's a problem, I don't want either of them in my life. And so that means I vetted that family, and that means my wife can trust them, which means that they can make friends. And this, for a lot of women, this is going to help them have the female.
That's really true, isn't it? I didn't think of it that way, because my wife is, she's the perfect CEO. My wife Alora is perfect CEO, right? We're a power couple nonsense. And so we would develop slightly different networks. And if you don't want to, if your partner doesn't like that somebody on the other side, it usually doesn't work. But you can build a great friend. So again, I want to stick with it's good. And so what you're saying is we can give people advice to do this. But my problem is that the addiction to the existing systems of sedation are very difficult to overcome, and I don't see that. Even we would have to have very severe market failure, in other words, which we're seeing, right? But there's got to be a market. There's got to be a product in the market you can buy, you can get a hold of. I don't know how to get that.
The products.
Well, we could create a fraternity.
The products in the market that are failing are people. That's the catastrophe. Right? They're buying and selling one another, they're consuming one another. They are failing as things to reintegrate into this place over time.
Yeah, I think that I would tend to look at the world a little bit more as an economist than a participant. And as an economist, I would say the incentives have to be there for people to move. And as an activist or a citizen, you say, but if I could just get people to agree and understand. And so the problem is that the first, if you can create the incentives, people will just do it. I don't have to
War trials.
What?
War trials from the very top, broadcast over all the screens all at one time until they're over. That reorients everybody.
Well, there's ways to do this where we address a specific problem, but the value that's provided in addressing that specific problem is the manner bond or the community or the camaraderie that we're talking about. One of the examples I point to from time to time, because they do this really well, is the CrossFit organization, right? They don't actually sell fitness. That's the solution they're offering. But what they sell is community. That's the big value people get on it, and why they grow so fast. I mean, when they were at their height, they were growing at 3% a month worldwide. That is insane growth for any organization. But it wasn't because they solved the problem of fitness for everybody. It's because they put people in a room together and presented them with the opportunity to struggle together and turn that into the value that's added to the solution of being fitness trainers. Right. So they didn't go out selling, hey, we're selling you a community here. They went out selling, we're solving your fitness problem. But the value they provided was that community structure that you engaged in just by being there. Right. You can do the same thing with shooting clubs. You can do the same thing with your whitewater rafting clubs, whatever. But we have to find a problem that we're solving to get the people in the door and then provide them the community once they're there. That's the value that's being provided. That's what keeps them there. That's what keeps them returning, keeps them coming back. That's what builds the loyalty.
I agree. I'm just
want
trying
to
to
add
figure out how to get.
Luke's point.
What's that?
Yeah, I just want to add to Luke's point about the CrossFit gym and so on. I mean, I've been going to one of those gyms for 7 years now. It isn't because, I can't set up a home gym or go to some other gym that's closer, but because that community, having those people together and, being able to compare each other's numbers, it's a shared struggle.
Right. One of the things I'm running into with the clients and customers that I'm working with through the stuff I'm doing is nobody feels like anyone has their back anywhere. And you don't get that in any way, shape, or form online. Right. I can't come to Brandon's house today because he's got a crazy person standing in his front yard. I can't do it.
That's the answer.
I come to everybody.
But I don't even like using the term community for anything that I'm doing online. One of the reasons I push back whenever we talk about bringing people into the community. I can't go help them directly. I can't call them community because I can't show up at their house today.
Mm-hmm. Nobody feels like anyone has their back. There's no insurer.
Right.
And networks are insurers. Okay.
There's no demonstration of insurance either. I mean, there's a lot of people saying it, claiming it, but there's no demonstration of insurance.
Yeah. So a friend is an insurer. Okay. That makes perfect sense. I see. What we keep losing people? I'm sorry. I'll present our time. We lost
Noah has to go. What happened to Gabriel?
Our plan is to insure everybody.
Yeah.
I shouldn't show up. I've done this for a while. I shouldn't show up as your best friend right away. That's terrifying for your life.
All right. So we've had 2 hours here. And I feel like this discussion's got more legs to it. So if we could put a marker, Francis, for continuing the social organization who's got your back type of thing. We could figure that out because that's the insurer. The insurer has legs. That's interesting. All right. I feel like having people leave has sort of thrown me. So we should probably wrap up. So because it's been our 2 hours. All right. Anybody else got anything they want to say before we leave? All right. Love you all. Thanks today for the great meeting. Again, for the audience, follow us on YouTube and Twitter. Bye-bye.